the pain that you often have to encounter in the organization feels wrong, but is right because that was you're righting a wrong, and that's where the pain occurs. And that's why so many businesses stay stuck, is because they have this affair, they have this person, and they're unwilling to have that hard conversation or multiple in order to make it right, and they stay stuck for years.
This is another quality of really successful founders that I've noticed, which is what you just said, is the ability to have the hard conversations sooner. And in my portfolio where there's first time founders, they're coming to me and in our monthly meeting saying, God, there's this guy who's running the ecom division and he's so bad and I'm having to do the job for him. What do I do about it, Steve? I'm like, what do you think? Yeah. But then they come back to me 2 weeks later and they're like, he's still there.
Yeah, right. And a year later, and you're like, it's still John. You're like, what are we talking about here?
I remember asking in one such meeting, does John know that you're unhappy with him?
Oh, yeah.
No.
Yeah, sure.
So there's this quiet dissatisfaction, which I think is a virus, right?
Right. And what no one wants to discuss is the fact that everyone else knows John sucks.
Amen.
And that becomes the minimum standard for what is acceptable for excellence in the organization. And so I think so if brand is what your reputation is externally, I think culture is kind of what reputation is internally. And so I define culture, operationalize, because I think culture is a very fluffy word. What does that mean? Right? It's the rules that govern reinforcement within an organization. What do we reward? What do we punish? And so the thing is just that there's people have values because they're bundled terms that ladder up many behaviors. If I said Rolls-Royce probably would have some value that's quality over speed, probably. Right. And so they would have that, but somebody would have to say well, what does that mean? Right. Well, we hope that we use this as a decision-making filter for how it affects behaviors on every situation so that when you're in the, should I go fast or should I make it right? You make it right. And there are other organizations kind of like the speed, justice and mercy, speed and quality. Both of them are important. And sometimes they sit diametrically opposed. And so we have to say, where do we sit in the gray so that we can duplicate decision-making across the organization so that we can maintain the culture. And so culture, Layla says this a lot, but culture, I think this is a Drucker quote actually, culture trumps strategy like twice a week and every day on Sunday.
Mhm.
If you have a mediocre strategy but an unbelievable culture, you will crush somebody who has a great strategy and a terrible culture.
Facts.
Because culture ladders up to performance and execution. And almost every business is limited by execution, not strategy. Most business strategy isn't that complicated. Like, let's do a really good job, so good that people tell their friends about us, and as long as we have enough gross margin, we'll make money. It's not that hard, right? It's just that the doing it is the hard part.
Yeah.
And so when we have these, they are the spoken and unspoken rules, mostly unspoken. If someone shows up 3 minutes late to a meeting and there's 10 people in the meeting and it's supposed to be a marketing meeting and I'm there, if I don't say anything, I have now said, we have an unspoken rule that if someone shows up 3 minutes late to a meeting, it's okay. I've reinforced that rule. Now, if I've reinforced it by not punishing the behavior or at least calling it out. On the flip side, if someone comes in and I berate them, that's also a way of changing behavior, maybe not the right way to do it. But I could then, what do you do in that situation? Someone shows up 3 minutes late. First off, you would probably sideline with that person and be like, hey, I don't know if you realized that you were 3 minutes late. What happened? And they're like, I was on a client call. It went late. I'm really sorry. Or I was on a sales call. For me in my organization, clients and sales will take priority. So if you have a meeting and you're on a sale and you're about to close it, close the sale, right? But if you were just doing nothing and we have this meeting, then this is the priority. And so the next time we hop on, I'll be like, hey guys, I just want to address something. John was late. He was late because of a sales call. Or when I DM'd him right as he got on late, I would say, hey, make sure you say that. And then be like, hey guys, sorry I was late. I was on a sales call. And then I would say, that's fine. You're good to go. Always go make money.
Yeah.
And then I'm reinforcing the right thing.
Yeah.
Right. And so I think we're very big on rapid feedback in the moment because that's how you train behavior. So if you look at, there's tons of studies on this, but basically if you want to train a dog, right, and you want it to sit, if you have it sit and then immediately give a biscuit, it learns really quickly. If you have it sit and then wait 10 seconds before you give a biscuit, it takes 3 times as many repetitions for it to learn that the sitting gets the biscuit. If you wait more than a minute, it never learns.
Really?
You can see the learning curve, the amount of repetitions just skyrockets until eventually there is no amount. But here's where it gets crazy. That biscuit is still reinforcing something, just not sitting. It's reinforcing the thing that just came before it. So if we want people to do something, we have to change it in the moment. And so when we train, and I think that we're a training organization, we're very good at training, whatever skills, is engineering ways to give many feedback loops in a short period of time around specific skills. So I use sales because it's one that everyone understands. If you're training a script with someone, if you let someone read through a script, and then at the end you say, hey, here's the things you could have done better, blah, blah. This is how 95% of people train. It also doesn't work. We set the premise with, you're going to read through the script, and in the first 30 minutes, we might get through a third of it. And I'm going to probably stop you like 30 times. And if that happens, it means we're doing it right. So we set the premise that I'm going to interrupt you a bunch of times. And as soon as you say the first line, I'm going to be like, stop, say it again, say it like this, go again. And then they're like, okay. And then they say it. And I'm like, awesome job, do it again. Awesome job, do it again. So I reinforce it as many times as I can. Okay, go to the second sentence, right? Now do first and second. Right? Do second and third, right? And you keep working your way through until eventually they just say it like a whistle. They can sing it because they've also had so many repetitions and so many feedback loops that they're like, this is what it sounds like when it's right. And I think that the vast majority of organizations have no idea how to train, and their entire training, their way of getting talent is just, let's hire 10 and we'll just see who works out, rather than being able to take someone and level them up. And I think that the ability to train is one of the largest alphas that exist in organizations, because if you can buy talent at B skill and get them to A+, then you net the delta in profit between what you had to attract and pay the person to come and what they perform at. If you have to use a picking strategy, then you have to pay for current market rate of the skill. And so you actually eat into margin because you don't know how to train. There are advantages to speed, and sometimes it still makes sense to bring in the talent because maybe the training requires so much time that it's not worth it. And so from a hiring perspective, because we were just talking, this is the theme, we always want to hire for the smallest skill deficiency. And so in low skilled labor, for example, if we have a cupcake bakery and I need somebody to work the counter, that is pretty low skilled labor. And so if there's a number of skills that are required, being able to be on time, smile, be nice, those things are bundled terms that have many skills underneath of them, right? Whereas teaching someone how to use the register might take like 30 minutes. And so it makes sense to hire for attitude and then train aptitude when you have low skilled labor. When you have really high skilled labor, I can't teach someone 10 years of being a CFO for M&A. This is an extreme example, right? And so in that instance, we still hire for the smallest skill deficiency, but I can probably teach someone to be nice under these circumstances faster than I can teach them to be a CFO. If they have everything that I want here, obviously you would want both, but the world isn't perfect. And so we just try to hire for the smallest skill gap, and attitude is a series of skills. And so instead of thinking of things in attitude and aptitude, just think of everything as skills, and then we hire always for the smallest deficiency.
The thing that's easiest to train up.
Yeah.
Okay. One of the things that's so central to that is we were saying about giving people feedback. And I wrote down, most companies and most entrepreneurs and founders are scared to give petty feedback.
Oh.
Because if, I might notice you making a slight error, but it feels petty to point that out. It feels like I'm some kind of rude dictator.
Yeah.
Why is that so important? And how do you create an environment?
I'm totally good with that.
Yeah, I know, but a lot of people aren't. I have lots of managers in my teams, and they don't want to offend people. Their central focus is too much on being nice, and it's,
dude, kind, not nice. It's one of our cultural, I wouldn't say it's not the one on the site, but things that are repeated internally all the time. Kind, not nice is one of the big ones, which is that you're actually being unkind to someone by not maximizing the likelihood that they succeed in their role. And people don't lose jobs typically because of one thing. It's usually 100 small things. And so if we can immediately fix those 100 small things, most people want to do a good job, and most people want to succeed, and most people want to move up. And we can maximize the likelihood that those things occur if we help them. And this is where the culture is there. If on that first day, like I said, we say, we're going to work through the script and we're only going to get through a third of it, I'm going to stop you 30 times to correct you. We've already kind of set the expectations of how things go here. Like, we will fix things and we will fix them fast. And it's understanding the difference. And we teach our teams this, is what is the difference between an insult and criticism? So criticism is a discrepancy between actual and desired. So you were supposed to be on time, and this week you were late twice. And so that is the discrepancy. And you're lazy is the insult. And so the judgment that's associated with the discrepancy is insulting someone. Pointing out the discrepancy is purely criticism, and that's objective. And so if you want to improve the team, remove insults, focus on criticism, and tell them what to do instead. And so the easiest way to think through this, I think, is stop, start, keep. So I'll tell you a real story. So we had a director level, so a relatively high person in the organization who was having behavior issues. Said differently, everyone thinks you're a dick. And so he ended up making his rounds of the executive team and having a sit down with all of them because he was really proficient at the skill. He was a high performer, like good at what he does. Just no one liked him. And so he talked to 4 different executives and the behavior didn't change. And so he finally came to my office and he was like a little bit worried and he was like, am I going to get fired? And I was like, no, HR will fire you if you're going to get fired. You're not going to meet with me. Like, what are we talking about? But when we sat down, I said, okay, I want to be clear. I want to decrease the likelihood that people call you a dick in the future. I was like, does that sound like an agreeable goal? And he said, yeah, I want that. I was like, okay, good. I also don't care if you are a dick. I just care that everyone else thinks you are. And so I just want to minimize the likelihood that I get drawn into this ever again. So the reasons that they are calling you a dick, we need to dive into that because every other conversation you'd had with, some of the leaders was just like, hey man, stop being a dick. And the thing is what do you do with that? Nothing. You just get insulted and then you have nothing to do. And so instead it's like, okay, when you cut people off when they talk, stop, start, keep doing. Do this instead. Shut up. So when someone else is talking, wait until they finish. And if you're not sure, ask if they're done. He's like, okay. When you give unsolicited advice on how they should run their department, don't. Or ask if they want it. If they say no, don't say anything. And so we identified 3 or 4 behaviors that he was doing. And I said, just do this instead. And literally the next week, people were like, what happened to him? He's like a new man. And the thing is that he wasn't a dick. He just didn't know how to behave. And so if you want to teach, teaching has to come from conditions and a behavior.